and welcome to the Good Girl Confessional. I am your host, Sandy Lowres, and the Good Girl Confessional is proudly brought to us by WB40, Women Beyond 40, a platform for women 40, 50, 60 and beyond. Before we begin today's podcast, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that this podcast is actually recorded on, and in my case, that is the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations, and we pay respect to their elders, past, present and emerging. Today in the podcast, I am talking with an extraordinary woman. She's brilliant, and I wish we'd had hours and hours to chat. So her name is Brianne Davis. She has been a Hollywood actress for over 20 years and is currently still a working actress. And she has grappled with a love and sex addiction. She's been in recovery for 12 years and she's written an incredible book called The Secret Life of a Hollywood Love and Sex Addict. And she also has a pretty amazing podcast, and it is called Secret Life. I will put up all the links to the podcast, but her podcast, she introduces people who have secrets to tell. Sounds like a really good match here in the confessional. I'm super excited to be chatting with Brianne today. Please welcome her to the confessional. Hello and welcome to the confessional, Brianne Davis. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am so good. I'm so good. I'm super excited to speak to you today in the confessional because it's been a bit of a journey for us to get here. Lordy.
It's been a hella journey, right? It's been like so many mishaps. Like we finally got it together.
It's like the universe finally said, yeah, you two better have a chat. So here we are, and I'm super excited.
Me too.
You are one extraordinary powerhouse of a woman because you've done so much, lady. I'm just looking at your bio is like reading a novel in and of itself. It's quite extraordinary. I was trying to figure out in my head, well, where do I start with this? Because you've done so much. So I want to let's start from the beginning so people know sort of who you are. So let's talk about life as an actress. How did all of that come about?
Well, I always like to say I became an actress 25 years ago because I didn't want to be myself. Like I always was wanting to put on different clothes, become different characters, because inside I wasn't comfortable in my own skin. I have ADHD. I'm dyslexic. Reading was really hard in school. I was shy. So going into acting gave me a chance to express emotions and feelings that I didn't know how to do it in real life. And I just love falling in love. I love playing the bad guy and all that. So yeah, I've been in the acting business in Hollywood for 25 years almost now. I've been in, my first big break was Jarhead, the movie Jarhead, playing Jake Gyllenhaal's girlfriend, Christina, on that. And then it's just, I'm one of those actors that you're like, I know you from somewhere, but I don't know what it is. Like I've literally been on every show you can imagine, but the big ones are like 6 on History recently for a couple of years, Casual on Hulu. I play Skye, this tatted up character I love. True Blood, I played Belinda, the waitress, the last 2 seasons. I've been on my favorite movie, Synchronicity. If you haven't watched it, it's this sci-fi movie. I play this really smart journalist, scientist, Abby, who I love. But yeah, I've been the Dasani, sparkling, annoying bubble girl. I've literally been on every CSI crime show you can imagine. I can't even think, Prom Night, Chrissy Lynn, like a bitch. I've been in so much. So I'm just one of those actors that's a working actor. I'm not an A-list celebrity. I barely get asked for my autograph, maybe a couple handfuls of times, but I'm just a working actor, an everyday working actor. And I was fine with that for the longest time, just staying as a working actor, going from job to job to job.
Yeah, wow. And like reading, as I said, reading your bio is like, wow, you've done a lot of work. So, and also shows that we should probably touch on too with things like The Mentalist and
Oh yeah.
yeah. So did you get you? So obviously the Mentalist, has a soft spot in Australian hearts because
Hmm.
we do love Simon Baker. Um,
Simon. He's so sweet. He's like the sweetest guy.
yeah, it's really funny. I love to hear that because you just never know. There's this expression that be careful when you meet your idols, that they're never who you think that they might be, right? So
Oh, 100%. Because when I actually was going to work with him, the impression that I get from him a lot, like, I'm like, oh, he's probably just one of those guys. But he's really like a huge sweetheart. And I was on Lucifer recently, and Tom, that's the lead of that show, is like the sweetest individual. But then I've met people you think are like the nicest humans, and they're like horrific. So I always say if you think they're mean in person, they're probably the nicest people. And if you think they're the nicest people, they're probably not. That's like my golden rule I have learned after 25 years.
I love that because I think that's really true, and yeah, not always, but I think as a general rule, I think you just have to be realistic, right? When you're meeting people
Yeah.
that we idolize, or that we tend to see on the big screen, or whatever it may be. And I'm a little bit like that as well with authors, because I just love books, and I through this podcast and through the magazine that I do, like, I'm very, very lucky to meet so many extraordinary women. And I'm consistently blown away when I meet women and they have, you know this constant thing we hear about women too, is that we have this, women have a reputation of being hard to work with. Women can be bitchy. Women are blah, blah, blah. I say, what a pile of shit, because,
Totally.
right? My
Or we
experience.
don't support each other, or we're all
Ah,
in
yeah.
competition with each other. But that's what they teach you. That's what they teach you, especially as a young woman, is like we get such a limited amount that we have to like take it from each other. And it's like there is abundance for all of us, and we all have to band together as women and support each other to even like get further. But I agree. I agree.
Yes, yes, yes. And so that's like part of the work that I do, is really changing that narrative, that women are
Love it.
incredibly supportive of one another. And I haven't found a woman that I've spoken to yet who hasn't been so generous with their time and their spirit and their story and their journey. Um, and I think that's the message that we need to get out into the universe, is that
Yeah.
women are complex and extraordinary and brilliant, but we're also really there for the sisterhood, and we're really trying to help each other and give each other space to share their journeys and stories to help women rise, right?
Right? I mean, yeah, 100%, 1,000%, a million percent. We need that.
We do. I had someone on the podcast, and she started talking about another media outlet called Mamma Mia, and she was saying, and afterwards she said to me, "Oh, wow, I'm so sorry. Is it okay that I mention them?" And I said, yes, because, the more women that join the choir, the louder the song. Like, that's how I see it. I say yes. So talk about everybody. That's what I say.
Yes.
So you're working in Hollywood, you're working with a lot of really
Hmm.
cool people, and you're on some pretty big productions, which is awesomely cool. My daughter will be loving listening to this, knowing that you've been on Lucifer, by the way, one of her faves. Um,
It was one of my favorite characters,
yeah.
Detective Dancer. She was like, she was just the most complex. And when you watch it, you won't like completely get it. But when I was shooting it, got to do like every emotion, everything, every scene. She's somebody different, and I just loved playing her.
That's
I didn't think I would, but she was one of my favorite characters.
I love that. And so that was another question I was going to ask you about, how, because
Yeah.
I love how passionate you are about your characters. Um,
Hmm.
so how do you sort of get your head into that space? Because you've played lots of really radically different female characters. So how do you get your head into that space?
That's the thing. It's like I'm not a method actor. I just assume the position. I think, with all the work I've done behind the scenes of Hollywood, especially directing and producing, and now writing a book and everything I've done with, people's psyche and work I do. I just really love to just humanize the person. I never look at my bad characters, because I do play a lot of like bad girl characters, that I never see them as broken or anything's wrong. I just see that just a survival tactic. So I have no judgment about any character I play. Either I've done it, almost did it, wanted to do it. So that's how I think about it. So when I go into it, I just find the humanity of the person and I want to do them justice. Like the writer to me is king. A lot of actors will change dialogue, will, make it their own. I'm actually not like that. I don't actually want to change the dialogue on the page. And sometimes when I go do like a more improv movie or something, they're like, "Oh, you can riff." And I'm like, "Okay, but like I want to honor what's on the page." But I do that too, but I will stick to the page, everything. And I just love bringing it to life. I love the whole concept of what shoes does she wear? What dress does she wear? And that's why a lot of my characters, I look completely different. I don't look the same in any of them. And I'm really grateful for that. And I'm grateful for the career I've had.
Yeah, wow. And what a career it's been, right? And I love that. And I love that you say, I'm a working actor. And, it's a tough gig. I mean, anybody who,
It's horrific.
right? I mean, any creative.
No, it is not for the faint of heart, right? Like I'm getting literally just last week, I got rejected twice for parts I really, really wanted. One part was like one that they pretty much said it was mine. And then they just went a little bit older and gave it to somebody else, which I understand because I saw who they cast opposite of her. Right. So it's not just you going in and doing a good job. It's you. Do you fit in the mold? Do you fit with your co-stars? Do you fit everything? And are you blonde? Then we can't have another blonde. If you watch, there's not a lot of blondes. So I dye my hair sometimes so I can play other characters. And it's like, yeah, it's a tough gig. I wouldn't give it to the faint of heart. My therapist once told me, she's like, you picked the worst career for what you suffer from, your addiction, like the absolute worst career. And I was like, awesome, thanks.
And that's a beautiful segue, by the way, into
Yeah.
I love it.
Dun dun dun.
Let's talk about it. So you've been really open and honest about having a sex and love addiction. In fact, you've written an extraordinary book. And the book, of course, is The Secret Life of a Hollywood Sex and Love Addict. And tell us, first of all, let's talk about the addiction, and then let's talk about the journey and the book.
Hey there! When Sandy's not interviewing kick-ass women, she's hanging out with me at Alex the Seal, a podcast about music and nostalgia. I'm Jo Pybus, and each episode, Sandy and I talk about all the songs that got us hooked up, knocked up, and broken up. Do yourself a favour and search Alex the Seal on your podcast app. Love you, Molly!
Yeah, I am a grateful recovering sex and love addict. And when people say that, I'm like, ew, that's gross. That sounds nasty. Like, why are you grateful you have this addiction? But really, I don't go out into the world anymore looking for people to give me my validation, my attention. I like to describe it the easiest way as if you go out in the world and sniff and snort people's energy, and they're like that. So I was going out into the world for the longest time looking for that soulmate, looking for that love partner to always make me feel that honeymoon phase, the butterflies, the tingles. I was addicted to being in love. And then when the relationship would turn real, I didn't have the tools. They weren't mirrored for me as a young child. I didn't see my parents having a healthy marriage, how to have communication, how to fight fairly and healthy. Those hard conversations were never taught to me, but they weren't taught to them by my grandparents, and so on and so on. So I don't blame them, but what I did is I found my power and control by manipulating other people, getting what I wanted from them, painting this perfect picture of like, I'm the perfect girlfriend, and then I could never live up to that. So then I would try to break up with them, start flirting with other people, like make the breakup messy, taking no accountability, total narcissistic tendencies. And I would then just go to the next person. And it was like that. It was like going from relationship to relationship to relationship. People think of sex and love addiction, especially as a woman, that I was out sleeping with a bunch of people. I haven't had many sexual partners. I've never had a one night stand. And I'm still a sex and love addict because I use my sexuality as a currency. I used it to manipulate and get things that I need. Which, if you think about it, 90% of the people in the world use their sexuality to get something, right? But our society, that's not healthy. And especially it's, with the dating apps and all of that, I really had to learn how to stop, take away all that attention, all that validation, stop dating, stop everything, to then find, like, who are you? What do you want? What do you actually like? You're dating this person and you don't even like them. They're mean to waiters. Like, something is wrong with this. It's not every other person not giving me what I need. It's that I'm empty. So I really had to dig deep. I've been in recovery for 12 and a half years. I've my step work, 12 steps, it's, like AA. I did those. It took me 9 years to finish those. I did therapy twice a week for God knows 8 years, I think. And I just worked a really hard program, and I was willing to give up my career. I was willing to give up my boyfriend. I was willing to give up everything so I could actually find myself and find my self-worth out of the outside shit that society tells us we need. So the gist is, my relationship can lead me today. My career, my money, my car, whatever it is could leave, and I will be okay. I couldn't say that 12 and a half years ago. I couldn't say I love myself. I'm okay just as I am. I don't need anything outside of me to give me my self-worth and validation. For so long, friends, even family members would reach for unavailable people, old exes, like, get back together, try to make it work. Like, it's exhausting, and I just don't do any of that anymore. And it's such a beautiful way to live. So that's the gist of explaining it, where other people can go, oh shit, me too. If you're flirting or like having a bunch of exes around, or a bunch of friends that are inappropriate, or friends that don't show up for you, you might have this problem too.
I think you're incredibly brilliant and brave to share. No, I do, to share this story, because I do think that for a lot of human beings throughout at least one part of their life, they have definitely used something about them to forward their life. And whether that's their youth, whether it's their sexuality, whatever it may be, a lot of us have been in relationships that we know are toxic, but we stayed. I look back on my life. I was thinking about this before I got, before chatting with you, and I was thinking, yeah, I can remember some some choice dates that that I pursued ridiculously, and one particular relationship which was massively toxic, and I don't know what I was thinking. But definitely part of the lure of that particular relationship was great sex. And then you kind of start to, like, it's very easy to believe that sex is love, right?
Oh yeah.
Very easy to dupe ourselves into believing that this kind of, connection that you have sexually is actually more than that. Somehow spiritually we're connected. Somehow we're meant to be. What a pile of crap if that's
We're
what we have.
soulmates. Look at it's all crap. It's all a bunch of crap. Really, you're just looking for this person to give you your self-worth, and that's what it is. It's like that fear of intimacy, that fear of abandonment, that fear of low self-esteem, fear of being loved. So you pick people that show up for how you show up for yourself. So when everybody, like you just said, going back to that toxic relationship, staying in a relationship because the sex is good, it's like, if you really get down to the nitty gritty, is that person actually available? Most of the time, 99% of the time, they are not available because you're not available. And that's what it is.
And I think that that's a really interesting thing, especially for women, to come to terms with, that, it really, a lot of issues that, that come out of dating and relationships and those and I wrote like a blog for many, many years about sex, dating and relationships over the age of 40. And I took my readers on this journey of my entire dating life. I never named names, but man, I was pretty raw and honest about what was going on. I look, ding,
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 right?
me too.
Right? And
You're like, why did I put that out there? And you're like, whatever, it's not mine anymore. Here, you
that's
can
right.
take
That's
it, you
exactly
know?
right. And I think I'm really glad that I did that. It was really cathartic because what it
Mhm.
helped me do was, I'd been in a long-term marriage. I was totally in love with that person. I was a little bit broken and shattered when it ended. And I think through that process and then writing about it, going on all these dates, I found myself, and I think that that's really what you've been through. And what you've been through is so
Yes.
extraordinary in comparison, by the way. I think like you're gutsy and brave, as I said, to share this story because you will be resonating with other women out there who think, oh my God, am I? Am I a love addict? Am I a sex addict?
Mhm.
And when we think about,
Fantasy addict,
right, there
fantasy
you go.
addict. That codependent is all of that is underneath the umbrella of sex and love
Right,
addiction.
which is fascinating, right? Because I think that we tend to externalize that stuff quite easily. So when we think about sex addicts, we tend to think about men in Hollywood. We think about, and I don't want to
Yes.
name names, but there's some pretty famous ones we all know about. Um,
Yes.
right? But it's true. We tend to sort of go, oh God, that guy, it's him. Why are we not
Cheated on
surprised?
his wife and then going to sex rehab and then now he's saying he's cured. First of all, it's not curable. I hate when people say that. This is not a curable addiction. It's not like drugs and alcohol. It's a treatable addiction, but it takes a lot of work. So if you're with someone that was a sex addict and they said they're cured, run. That's my first thing. Run very far from them because that's not true. They haven't done the work because you cannot cure yourself of this addiction. It's a progressive disease. And as a woman with sex and love addiction in Hollywood saying, here's what I have. This is what I chase fantasy. I chase soulmate. I chase that person to complete me. I will go back to unavailable people because I'm actually scared of intimacy and don't know how to attach my sexuality with intimacy. So that's what it is. That's the narrative I wanted to break. That's why I wrote the article for HuffPost. That's why I wrote the book. That's why I came out 2 years ago because I was tired of that narrative you just said that it's some guy getting caught cheating on his wife going to rehab. I was just so over that narrative.
And also, too, that this societal view that we tend to roll our eyes when we hear it with men in Hollywood because
Yeah.
we think, oh, he's just using that as an excuse because he's had bad behavior and he played up on his wife or whatever it may be. But the reality is, in doing that, it's really damaging, I would imagine, to those people that genuinely do have a love and sex addiction because it's like basically minimizing your addiction and what you're going through. Do you feel that?
Yeah, it's the most. I mean, you can ask anybody in the 12-step world. Sex and love addiction program is the hardest one. So we have people that come in and they get off heroin, they get off fentanyl, they've been sober from alcohol for 30 years and they say, I have been dodging this room like the plague. It's like they say AA is the last house on the block, but Slaw, that's the nickname, Slaw is the shack in the back that like no one wants to go to. It's like the last, they call it the PhD of all the other programs because underneath a chemical addiction, underneath shopping, eating, all those addictions is relationships. Relationships are the number one thing to break your sobriety and any other addiction. So it's really hard and you have to put in a lot of work. You have to work a program. You have to do therapy. I believe 12-step can't just fix you. You have to do the therapy side. You have to do the body work. You have to do the trauma work. You have to do like look back at your lineage and see where addiction even came from and how it translated down the line. There's so much work with this addiction that you have to do to actually get out of it. And then once you get out of it, you have to bring back relationships in a healthy way. It's like asking an alcoholic, okay, now let's bring the bottles of vodka back in a healthy way. Like, so, and then humans trigger you, right? So if you and I are hanging out and you're late or you say something that reminds me of so-and-so, I'm triggered. So then I have to go, okay, is it hysterical or historical? Is this true? Am I projecting on you? Oh no. Am I trying to make our relationship something that it's not? Do I have unrealistic expectations of you? Am I using my sexuality to manipulate you? Like, there's all these things you have to go through this checklist. And then imagine a dating. That's just a friendship I was talking about. So it's like, how do you do that? And then you have to get sexual without manipulating and staying connected, which you didn't get those tools. And then once you're with somebody, how do you keep the sexuality going? How do you not turn sexually anorexic, which happens to a lot of people? So it's a constant work in progress. I go to more meetings today than I did 12 and a half years ago. I sponsor more women than I ever have. I, really show up if I'm asked to speak. I go to rehab facilities and speak because not many people have sobriety in this program. I'm like an old timer, and an old timer in AA is like 50 years, 40 years, 30 years. I have 12 and a half. I'm an old timer, and there's not many of us. So it is one of the hardest addictions. The withdrawal from sex and love addiction. I cried every day for 9 months. And I write about this in chapter 3. Every day for 9 months. And I'm not just talking like little tears. Like, I'm talking like crawling on the ground, like like ugly cry, like all the trauma, all the things I did to myself, the situations I put myself in, the abuse I took, the people not showing up for me in my life, all that came up. And then all the stuff I did to other people and had to make amends for and look at. And what's my character defects? Oh, I'm selfish and self-seeking. I'm impatient. All those things. It's brutal. I could literally talk forever. You have to cut me off. I'll just keep talking.
I'm loving this. Absolutely loving it. I think it's really important, for anybody who's listening along here. And I'll put all the links, by the way, in the show notes so people can follow you as well, because I think this will probably resonate with a lot of people, and people may not recognize it necessarily as love and sex addiction. But there are a lot of women that I have spoken to who have really gone from one unhealthy relationship to another unhealthy relationship to another unhealthy relationship. And at the core of all of this, and probably why you cried for 9 months, is because, as you said, the hard work is the internal work, right? Right? It is the internal work of why don't I love myself? Why don't I think I am worthy? And how do you create a healthy, loving relationship with self so you can then go into the world kind of armed with, well, as you say now, if you lost your relationship tomorrow, would it hurt? Yes. But would you be okay?
Yes. 100%. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That is the difference. I couldn't say that. I couldn't say I would be okay. I would survive. Yes, I'm not allowed to run from feelings anymore. And that's what this is, not knowing how to feel your feelings. I only want euphoria. I don't want any other feeling. So when another feeling happened, I would run from it and use a person, text somebody, call a girlfriend. I literally would keep my friends on hostage for hours on the phone if I was having a problem. Like, this happened and then this happened. And then as soon as I got off with them, I would call another friend because that didn't fix me. And I found myself one day sitting on Melrose after an audition, and I found myself sitting in the phone, and I called 4 friends, and I kept them all hostage, trying to make me feel better, them to tell me the thing I needed to hear to help get me out of that sadness, that loneliness that I feel. And it was like, oh my God, I use everybody in my life. I don't just use the opposite sex. I use every single person in my life to fix me. And that is not fair. And it's like raping other people of their energy. And that's what this addiction does.
Yeah. Wow. That's huge, because when we think about it, where's the line between being a supportive friend and you're right? Where is the line between leaning on people when you do need them to, okay, I've abused that situation? And it's hard sometimes. It's a blurry line.
It is a blurry line, but this is how I look at it, and this is how I try to describe it in the book. When I wrote my really long title, Secret Life of a Hollywood Sex and Love Addict, like the longest title ever, but I loved it. I was like, that's the title. It came to me in a dream. And when I wrote it, I wanted to write a story where you could pick it up and there's these 10 rules, and you could pick it up and go, how do I be a good friend? how do I not use my friends? And it gives you guided things you can look at. For example, like if you are using a friend to fix your problems, there's a red flag right there. First of all, no one can fix your problems. No one can make you feel better. Yes, do you use them or talk to them and be a voice and just like, hey, can I have 10 minutes of your time and just get this off my chest? A lot of my friends that are especially in Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous with me, we call and ask permission. Like, I didn't do that before. I would just emotionally dump on people. Like, here's my shit. Like, you take it. Like, but now I call a friend and I say, hey, can I get your ear for a minute? I just need to like get this off my chest. This just happened. And then we have this dialogue where it's like, do you want feedback or do you just and that's the boundaries that you can go, actually, I don't want feedback. I just needed to get it off of me and just like have somebody else hear what I'm going through. Or sometimes you're like, yeah, I'll take your feedback. So it's like those boundaries were never taught to me, like how to be a good friend, how to show up for other people, how to not emotionally dump on them. So I don't go to any of my friends now to fix me, to fix a feeling. If I'm in a dark place and I'm having a really hard time, I will reach out and say, I'm in a really dark place right now. I don't know why. I just like, can I just talk to you for a little
Yeah,
bit?
but
But I
yeah,
didn't
and I
have
think
that
that that's really
dialogue.
healthy and that's great. I mean, I have many actually, but a number of girlfriends, honestly, where they can call me and say, I just need to vent. And or I say, I just need to vent.
Yeah.
And the moment you say those words or hear those words, they're not asking you necessarily to fix anything. They're saying, I just need to get it off my chest. Right. And I do that as well. So, I have a
Yeah.
couple of girlfriends who are brilliant. I just call them and say, I just need to vent. I'm having a day. And they go, lay it on me. And you go, blah, right? And then that's it,
Exactly.
That's it.
Yeah, that's it. And there's something beautiful about it. It's just being there for someone else and not wanting to fix it. And I think especially with social
Yeah.
media, this toxic positivity, like you had to fix it, do affirmations, help your friends. Like it's like, no, sometimes you just got to sit in that shit and have someone else hear it and validate that doesn't sound like fun, but then allowing you to still process it and feel it. For so long, I've been running from those
Yeah, wow.
feelings.
But as you say, for like 12 and a half years, you have been in recovery, which is kind of extraordinary. And, healed enough to be able to share this story with the world and help other women, as you say, and sponsor other women. And I imagine, like any
Yeah.
other addiction, do you have moments where you think, oh, hang on a minute, I'm in fear of slipping or yeah.
Well, here's the thing. People slip a lot in Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous. It's very, very common to get time, like I said. For me, I didn't slip. For me, it was life or death in that moment. I remember my dark night of the soul, and I'm writing book 2 to Secret Life about my character Roxanne. I make up a name because, of course, can't be me. Anyways, I could get sued. I had to make fictional character. Anyways, so I have this dark night of the soul where I had a moment in the mirror and I'm like, oh my God, am I going to be doing this the rest of my life? Am I going to be always looking outside of myself to give me my self-worth and validation, to give me, because I felt so empty. And there was that moment, it was like, I'm going to be on my deathbed, like never connected fully to another soul, never being my authentic real self, always wearing a mask, always putting on a new costume, always trying to portray what society tells me I have to be successful in this world. So that moment for me was like the bottom. Like I had that flash. It was like a God shot is what I call it. It's like, here you are on your deathbed and never connected. And that to me would be the most tragic. So when I walked into that room and I talk about my first meeting in chapter 2 and 3, when I walk into that room, it was the most difficult thing I have ever done, but it was like the most rewarding thing I've ever done. And nobody can take the work I did the last 12 and a half years from me. Like that will go to the grave with me. And that to me is everything. And that's why I never lost my time. I, used all the tools, the chips, everything. And I was like, this little plastic 6-month chip, I don't want to give it back, So I really used the tools and I showed up for myself. And I said, because my therapist said, if you dig through the shit, meaning your internal shit, the things you've done, all that stuff you've been pushing down, the trauma and all that, and get to your goals, you never have to do this again. So I said, okay, I surrender. Like, I'm just going to do it, because I knew I could always go back and it would be worse. And I couldn't do it anymore.
And it is that real. I honestly believe that when you truly connect with yourself, it is very difficult to go back to things, bad habits, damaging behavior that happened before, because you actually value yourself,
Well, is in the shame. I've seen the shame from the earliest times I went in 12 and a half years ago. I saw the shame when people lost their time. And it is so much harder to come back after you've lost. The shame and the stigma that is overwhelming when you slip or you mess up is just debilitating at times. I've walked my friends through it. My sponsor, Alice, in the book, that's what I named her, but she was like the holy grail of our program, and she lost her time, at my 7 years. And the slip she has gone to this day, it breaks my heart, and I can't fix it and I can't save her. But I've seen people murder over this addiction. I've seen people commit suicide. I've seen people go back to their drinking and drugs because someone broke up with them. I've seen people almost die from this. I've talked in jails for 2.5 years in downtown Los Angeles, the women's facility. And every single woman in there was in there for sex and love addiction. She did something for some person, sold something, sold herself, whatever. And I've just seen the darkness. So I never, ever want to go back to that. It's just not worth it for me.
It's a powerful thing because you're this far into a journey, to then see other people starting that journey, I imagine, is a powerful reminder as well, right? I really want to talk about your extraordinary podcast, which I love and I listen to, the Secret Life podcast. Tell us how that started. And so basically the premise of this podcast, you can pull me up if I'm wrong, but I love it, is that basically people come onto the podcast and they tell their secrets. And the secrets are varied,
pretty much,
and very, very diverse. And people's identities are protected. And it's so tell me how all of this started.
Well, that's the thing. I was writing the book, right, 2 years ago, and I wrote an article for HuffPost. That was like my coming out thing right before the book. And I was like, the morning of, I was like, oh my God, it's coming out at 9 a.m. What am I doing with my life? I'm ruining my career. What am I doing? No, like huge panic attack almost, right? Then the article comes out. An hour goes by, 2 hours. Nothing happens. I was like, oh my God, humble yourself, lady. Like, no one cares. Get over yourself. You're like this small on the planet. But then what did happen, which I didn't expect, is I got thousands and thousands of DMs, emails, all of that saying, oh my God, me too. I never knew what this was. I've never even heard of this. I've been in 12-step and I've never heard of this program and all that. My dad has this. My mom has this. My sister, like, went on. And I realized for the first time in my life, I didn't have any shame anymore or stigma, because I was always walking on set going, oh my God, you think you're a sex and love, you're a sex and love. And I never really told people I worked with that weren't close to me I was in this program, because there is so much stigma and shame. And you don't walk on a set and go, hey guys, I'm a recovering sex and love addict. Like, like they'd be like, oh, over here. Like, so it was the first time I felt like a whole person. And I didn't realize, even after 10 years of recovery, that I needed that. I didn't realize, because I was never going to break my anonymity. Just so you know, in sex and love addiction, you're actually not supposed to talk about it, which irritates the crap out of me. There's this rule, like, don't promote, just like do your work and it will show to whoever needs to see it, which I totally get. But there comes a time when someone's got to break their anonymity to be like, hey, this is out there and this is affecting a lot of young kids right now. You know, the porn availability, over sexualizing yourself, the filters, trying to be this person, fake intimacy with DMs and texting and the dating apps. Don't even get me started. That's like a whole other podcast for me and you to
And I
talk
feel
about.
like you,
But
I feel
like,
like I will have you
it
back
is
and we will talk
ruining.
about that because that's powerful. Yeah.
Yeah, it is
Mhm.
ruining.
Yeah.
They say it's an epidemic. It's ruining this younger generation. So what happened after I wrote this article, like right before actually, I was speaking and I got my 10-year chip, and there was all these 20-year-olds, 19-year-olds coming in saying, I can't feel intimacy. I can't have sex with a girl. I feel so disconnected from myself. I can't find, like, I did things that I allowed someone to do stuff. Like, it was just so sad. And I got to be like, oh my God, this is bigger than you now. You've done your recovery. Now you have to be of service on a bigger level, not just to your community and the rehab world. Like, you need to be service bigger. So when I let go of that last bit of shame and I felt like a whole person, like a month later, I woke up in the middle of the night and was like, Secret Life podcast, tell me your secrets and I'll tell you mine. So it's like this whole thing came out of like, I'm going to allow other people to let go of secrets from the past that they've already been through or they haven't dealt with, or secrets in the present they're still going through. And I'm going to allow them the chance to feel that letting go of the shame and stigma. And it's been, I got a mic, a $40 mic. I interviewed a couple friends. And before I knew it, I had 130 interviews in a matter of couple months. Anonymous people, and I knew we had something special. My husband does it with me. We had something special when my first anonymous caller from New York came on and said that she shot herself in the chest with a shotgun because she couldn't reach perfectionism. And this was a very successful person. And I just was like, oh my God, this is bigger than me. And I've just been so grateful. We've had really dark secrets and really fun, light secrets. And anybody's welcome to come on. I changed the name. 80% of our guests changed their name. And it's just a chance for me to connect to another person and be of service to them and help the listeners not
I
feel
love
alone.
it. And I love it. And I love listening to it because I think, and that's the thing, it's not just, oh, I'm listening to the nitty gritty secrets of other people. It's actually so human. I think that that's what it is. And you hear the
Yeah.
emotion. And as you say, some of them are quite light and fun and brilliant, but some of them, as you say, very deep, very dark. And they've probably hung on to this secret for so many years. It's quite powerful in a very human way for human beings to be able to go,
Yeah.
I've held this crap inside me for how long, and I get to tell somebody.
Yeah, I mean, my husband and I were talking about it the other day and we said, oh my God, because we get these emails from our guests. We get from listeners saying, thank you so much for that episode. I did that. But when you get an email from a guest and they say, wow, letting go of that, then help me deal with this other thing I was doing, then help me go further. And that's been the most fulfilling thing, is to hear someone, you got to help someone else go to deeper healing that they didn't even know they needed. So that's
And I
been the
think
most
people, when they
beautiful
reach
thing.
out to you to come on and tell that secret, I almost feel like they're giving themselves permission to kind of either A, let it go, or B, deal with it. Walk away, after the podcast and kind of go, oh, I have to
Yeah.
deal with this now. That's pretty big. It's amazing, but I love the way that you interact with people in the middle of all of that as well, because, it can't be easy all the time to hear some of those secrets, which are pretty, yeah.
Yeah, there was a couple of them that really, really, really got to me. The abortion, using abortion as a form of birth control, which I've had an abortion, I've talked about it, but just that, the nitty gritty of that was really overwhelming for me. And then there was another one where a woman gave birth to her son, and then the OBGYN sexually assaulted her right after. Why? And it was just, because listen, I've done bad things. To survive in this world, doesn't make me a bad person. But sometimes the humanity of people and the things other humans do to other people is just overwhelming at times. But I just want to create a safe space for myself and them and the listener, that I have no judgment. Whatever you've done, I've probably done, thought about doing, and almost did, like I've heard it all. So you can't tell me something that I would have any judgment on you doing or it done to you. So I really come from a place of, I learned through sponsoring, for 10 years, 12 years. I got to learn how to just listen and help someone dig deeper to go to even further healing. And so I use the same things that I do with my sponsors that I've had for 8-9 years. My clients now that I work with, a lot of big clients that don't want to walk into the slaw rooms. They're too visible. They don't want to be seen. And so I help them do that work in a safer space for them.
As I said, you are an extraordinary woman. You are kick-ass. I feel like we will definitely have you back in the confessional, because I feel like there's so much more to unpack here and talk about. I'm enormously grateful to have had this opportunity to chat with you in my confessional, which which I love. And, congratulations again on your book, The Secret Life of a Hollywood Love and Sex Addict. This is, by the way, an Amazon #1 bestseller, so congratulations on that. And I, for one, am very much looking forward to book number 2.
Thank you.
Can't wait. I know, how exciting.
It's in the
works. So, not that we need an excuse to talk further, but I can't wait. And I'm sure that you'll be back in the confessional chatting about that one as well. Thank you for your honesty and for your beautiful energy, because I think, as I said, by putting that out into the world and breaking that rule that, the #1 rule of Fight Club is don't talk about Fight Club. But by breaking that rule, the #1 rule of slaw is don't talk about slaw, is you're actually going to be helping so many other women and men who are out there who have this stigma or didn't even realize that this was what they were going through. They didn't even realize they've got an addiction going on.
I have both genders, but all reach out. Like, I've worked with both, and it's just like, this disease it affects everybody, the housewife, the CEO, the janitor. It affects every single person, because we have to relate to humans. And if you don't have the tools how to have healthy relationships, you might be suffering.
It is extraordinary. And as you said, a bit of an epidemic amongst our young people. And, they're growing up in a really different world. So I look forward to having you back on and chatting about that. I feel like that's a whole other podcast, which is great.
Yes, that's a whole other conversation. We'll have a very, very long conversation.
I think you're fabulous. Thank you so much for your brilliant time today. And I look forward to chatting again soon.
Sounds good.
Bye.
Thanks for having me.
Listening to the Good Girl Confessional podcast. The Good Girl Confessional podcast is brought to you by WB40, Women Beyond 40 magazine. Available now at WB40.com. The Good Girl Confessional podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you listen to quality podcasts. We're also now available on YouTube. We chat with really interesting women about their hard-won wisdom, but it really helps us if you can subscribe, like, and share the podcast. Thanks so much for your support. Bye for now.